One Piece episode 5, Millaway's, the restaurant at the end of the universe. It's not, is it? Let's eat at Baratiers, whatever it's called. I don't know how to pronounce it. They pronounce it a few times in the show. It doesn't matter. We don't even really need to get it right. Just like I couldn't know Nami's name. Didn't matter. Here we have the baddie of the week, although this one looks like it's going to be a 2-episode baddie, or let me rephrase that. It looks like he walked off at the end of this episode. And so we are still at the restaurant, the floating restaurant in the middle of the fog bank that everyone seems to know how to get to. Okay, now there's something really interesting in this episode which I liked, and that was there was a little scene with Kobe on the ship talking to Axe Hand's son, who of course had the haircut from Zorro. And that character said to Kobe, "You might know a lot about knots, but you don't know the way the world works." And he said to Kobe that the world government, or whatever they call themselves, so I'll just call it the world government here, could not be seen to be doing certain things. It would not look good to the public. And so what they did instead was they allowed these warlords or pirate lords to exist and do their warlordy, pirate lordy things. However, now and again they would do things on behalf of or on the bequest of the world government. So the world government will turn a blind eye to their piratey ways, as long as every now and then they do the yucky stuff that the world government doesn't want to seem to be doing. So that's the establishment we have. He said, this is how the world works. And yes, we all know this is how the modern world works as well. So Mr. Millhawk here is kind of like a freelance warlord who's being used as some kind of a pawn by the Marines, in this case, Luffy's grandfather, who we saw a little bit of a flashback. Luffy as a little kid wanted to be a pirate and grandfather wanted him to be a Marine. So this is the setup, and this guy is a brilliant swordsman. Now, we can be told he's a brilliant swordsman, but again, we are shown how great he is during the phone call from the Marine captain of the Marine vessel to him while he is defeating people left, right and centre with his sword. And it looks like he just chops a ship in half completely from the shoreline even. So we don't need to be told he's a great swordsman. We are shown it. So when it's mentioned later, we don't doubt how good he is. Of course, he wears a cross around his neck, and when he disengages it, it turns out it's a little tiny thing with maybe a 3-inch blade. This is how great a swordsman he is. And he is hired or requested by the Admiral to go and capture Luffy and bring him back. And of course he meets Zorro, they have a sword fight. Now he defeats Zorro. So thankfully, Zorro's 2 normal swords get destroyed, so he's not ridiculously walking around with 3 swords, and I hope moving forward he doesn't miraculously repair them. I think he really only needs the 1 sword, which is the one he got from his friend in the flashback, or she died and he was allowed to have her sword. I think it would be more fitting for him to have that 1 sword, and we basically have seen how he is forced to now use that 1 sword. And so this sets the scene. Now, this pirate defeats Zorro and has a nice brief convo with Luffy. Basically wants to find out what his goals are. Like, remember, he doesn't work for the Marines as in, I have to do exactly what the Marines say all the time. So when he finds out Luffy's goal and that he's a little bit of a loose cannon, and he's like, yeah, like, I don't know why this guy's such a big deal. I'll leave him alone for now. That's what it appears to be. And tells Zorro, you know, once you improve, come and see me again and we'll see how you go. So I liked that. In this sense, he's the baddie that I like. I like this baddie. He's got a weird sense of honor. We, of course, meet what would be the chef, because in this episode, I think actually they call him the cook, and Luffy is the chore boy because he needs to do chores to pay back for all the meals that they ate without having any money to pay for them. Now, we do see a little bit of a change in character as well in this one, with Nami is going to ditch them, and she's got a chance to ditch them, and she's ready to ditch the crew. We come to the realization she has her own agenda, which we already knew. We already knew she had an agenda because she had the little slug communication device and she had talked to somebody on it, but we don't know who. So we do know she had an agenda already, and she almost spilled the beans that she had something else going on, but she cut herself short. She went off and she bought a bottle of rum for them to drink. So she had a chance to leave them, but she didn't. She came back. So I think from this moment on, we are cemented that she is now loyal to this crew and that they are actually her friends. So I think that's a nice little arc change of heart. We've seen that in this show. We've seen how they've all kind of come together. They don't want Zoro to die, and he does have a pretty bad looking injury on his chest. We're going to find out how that is healed, and we do know that the cook will end up joining their crew. Apart from being a cook, he's also a brilliant fighter in some fashion. Now, Luffy fantastically rephrases or reiterates a few times. He just wants people to pursue their dreams, and that people should be allowed to pursue their dreams. And he is not going to get in the way of anyone who wants to pursue a dream. So we see that. And of course, this is why he doesn't talk Zoro out of having the fight. It's Zoro's dream to be the best fighter, and why he encourages the cook in this episode to cook, because the guy's a brilliant cook, the best cook in the East Blue, as he says, and his dream is to be at a certain restaurant and, whatever. And Luffy's like, your dream is to cook. You should cook, and you shouldn't just let some random old guy stop that from happening. Now, Luffy does put his foot in it to that random old guy who runs the restaurant there, that despite being banned from cooking, he cooked to help a starving man. So Luffy liked that as well, because it meant he had a good heart, and asked him to join the crew. Now, what I also like is the cook lit a cigarette with a Zippo lighter, or it sounded like a Zippo, so we'll just call it a Zippo. They always seem to use Zippos in movies. So he's used a Zippo. And also, when Nami was fleeing, paying close attention to the bag she was using, it just looked like any old-fashioned vinyl sports bag, or old-fashioned vinyl school bag from back in the day with a zipper on it. And it's just kind of strange to see this piratey world, which we associate with as maybe something in the 1700s or the 1800s, as people having Zippo lighters and vinyl sports bag with zippers on them and things like that. It's just a little bit of a quirky thing to see. It's almost future tech and past tech working hand in hand, and that sort of gives it a little bit of a charm, kind of like the original Star Wars had robots working in agrarian type of societies at the same time, because we never saw Coruscant. We always saw these outer rim places where they're doing things old school, but they've also got robots at the same time, or droids in Star Wars. So I like that about the series, what I've seen so far. Also on point always. The acting has been brilliant. The camera work's brilliant. So far, I haven't been able to fault really anything in this series. So episode 5 leaves it a little bit open that we will see the baddie of the week in a future upcoming episode, or maybe another series later on. We've established that Kobe has been convinced by the Admiral that the world isn't fair, and you just have to do things that fit within the rules of the world if you want to have your independence and freedom. Otherwise, you'll kind of get stomped out. And basically, you can either accept that and live with it, or you can go down fighting it. That was my impression of that little conversation he had with Kobe. And overall, thoroughly enjoyable episode, but let me know what you think down below.